Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Men number 12, cover dated September 1992. So this is the first issue of Adjectiveless X-Men after Jim Lee's departure, and we have our fill-in artist here taking care of the cover, Art Thibert. And we have this new character who's introduced in the issue. We don't get his code name inside, but we have it here on the cover in the cover caption, "At the Mercy of Hazard." So that's this chap here. Interesting use of screen tone by Thibert for the texture of the cloth of Professor X's jacket. And interesting technique here as well on the torso of Hazard. It looks like these are very finely fine ruled lines, and we see that on the inside too. So let's open this one up to the first page and we have a setting, Riking Hospital, Las Cruces, New Mexico, and we have a juxtaposition of the past and the present. So a young boy in the past undergoing some kind of emergency, and a medical team coming to deal with him in the past and as it turns out in the present too. Just a few things to note about Thibert's art style here. Obviously imitating Jim Lee, and he had been for the previous few months doing finishes of Jim Lee's breakdowns on this particular title. So he's in a good position to present us with a good or reasonable simulacrum or imitation of Jim Lee's style. So let's open this up to our double page, almost double page splash. So we've got the present here with this adult version of this child, and we have this paralleling of this emergency situation, and the revelation that whoever this person is, he's a mutant. So the title of the story here, Broken Mirrors, and the creative team, Fabian Nicieza. This is his first issue of Adjectiveless X-Men, and he'll remain the writer up to issue 45. And our artist, Art Thibert, with an assist from Dan Panosian and Trevor Scott. So Panosian and Scott assisting on inks, I would imagine, but maybe a bit of penciling of backgrounds too. Tom Orzechowski, letterer, Joe Rosas and Marie Javins, colorist. And here we go. So let's open this up to get into the story, and we have the conclusion of this scene with the pacification through tranquilizers of the adult patient here, and they're wondering what triggered his seizure. And it turns out he was watching CNN and he saw the news reports of his father's death. Okay, so let's continue with the issue. And then we switch to our protagonists, the X-Men. And we've got a nice few pages at the X-Mansion. We've got Rogue going for a swim in the lake. And we've got Gambit meeting her with a towel. And she doesn't take the towel from him, but takes his bandana off his head and flings it on the ground. And their conversation here is about their recent flirtations, or at least Gambit's flirtation with her. And he brings up the fact that maybe they need to talk about the revelation that he had a wife, Belladonna. Now she's dead now as well. That harks back to the crossover with Ghost Rider. And then he's asking her here to tell him how she really feels about Longshot. So of course, Longshot, in the previous issue, number 11, Jim Lee's last, it's revealed that he and Alison Blair, Dazzler, are going to have a baby together. So Rogue is fairly coy here, saying that she doesn't know what she's feeling. She doesn't know what's going to happen between them. Just wait and see which way the wind blows. And the wind blows the bandana towards Psylocke, and we have the arrival of a car here that the Beast is going to use to drive her to the airport, because she is going for a trip to, as he says, merry old England, to visit her brother. So this will be the first time that Betsy's visited Brian since her transformation into an Asian-bodied woman back in Uncanny X-Men 257 to 259. And yeah, so interesting. And just what's missing from this particular page is any kind of an editorial note that would point to the reader that they can see Betsy turn up in England and meet Captain Britain Brian Braddock in Excalibur number 55 next month by Alan Davis. It's an issue I have, and it's a great issue actually. And here at the end of this sequence we have, as it turns out, Cyclops watching Betsy's departure to the airport, and he's also holding a picture portrait of Jean Grey. And this harks back to a subplot that goes back to Lee's time on the book, where he was developing some kind of love triangle between Psylocke, Jean, and Scott. So Scott is there thinking that Jean is his love, and he leaves the room, but he closes the door a bit too hard, and so her picture portrait falls onto the ground, and the glass smashes. So a little bit portentous there. Nicieza picking up on that subplot. And then Scott turns up in the danger room, control room, and looking out over a training sequence that Professor X is supervising for Jubilee. And Jubilee is going up against the new version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, who'd been appearing over in X-Force most recently. And we have a little in-joke here with Panosian's name on the street sign here. So probably Panosian working on this particular page and giving himself a shout out there. I think it's time to comment on the art. This is pretty nice art here by Thibert, really evoking some of the tropes and even compositional practices of Jim Lee. But a little later in the issue we'll see a bit more of this, where we get kind of straight on angles and less of the difficult, like top down or more interesting angles that you would expect and get from Jim Lee. But pretty serviceable art from Art Thibert, substituting for Jim Lee after his departure. And I wonder, let me know in the comments if, when you read this originally back in '92, did you notice Jim Lee's absence, or were you, so to speak, fooled by Thibert's imitative style? So we've got this little odd little moment here where the simulacrum of Blob smooches Jubilee, and a claw pops out of his forehead. And this is Wolverine, who is interrupting the training sequence in a pretty cool anchor image here. But again, note the kind of straight on angle, whereas if it were Jim Lee, you might get a twist or on that angle, maybe looking down a little bit, just a bit too straight on. And Wolverine's head here is a bit too sitting right down on his, he doesn't seem to have much of a neck really, is what I'm saying. This seems almost like a swipe of one of Jim Lee's panels of Wolverine from the Omega Red story, which some of those issues were finished by Thibert. So obviously looking back at his files there when working on this issue, this looks like a shot of Professor X from X-Men #1. So again, lots of little callbacks, maybe some swipes going on in this issue. Now what's happening here is Wolverine has come across a file that was sent to, it turns out, sent to Professor X, and he was seen reading in X-Men #5. So it's the Xavier file, and Wolverine's been reading through it, and he thinks that there's something rotten about the file. He's been investigating recently in his own title, and also throughout the Omega Red storyline and the aftermath, his own origins, the Weapon X program, all of that. And yeah, as he says here to Professor X, I got a bad feeling about this, Chuck. Whatever your father did, it reeks of the same garbage pile my own past does. So in this file, it contains information about Professor X's father, Brian, and the people he was working with at Almagordo Nuclear Research Facility, and presumably, yeah, back in the 60s, I think 1963, I think is it? No, 1964 is the date mentioned by Jubilee regarding the documents in the file. So then we switch back to New Mexico and the Riking facility, and we have the inmate Carter waking up from his being tranquilized as an adult, and basically blowing up the facility as part of his escape. And he determines that he's going to go and get some answers from his father, even though his father's dead. As he says here, it's time for dead men to tell some tales. And he has killed, using his powers, the medical team or orderlies at the facility that he's escaping from. Again, some of these shots very reminiscent of Jim Lee. This one here, this is very reminiscent of Jim Lee with the knocked back head. Very Lee-ish, this particular panel. Let's continue on. Yeah, I actually like this double page half splash of Wolverine in Professor X's office. There's interesting arty use of screen tone here on the window, on the silhouettes cast by the moonlight through the window frame on the ground. It's nicely done. This page looks like it was very carefully worked over by Thibert. And so basically Professor X says he doesn't really know much more than what's in the folder, and Wolverine is asking him what to do next, and Professor X says he doesn't know, but he does know where to begin, even as there's a news report about Alexander Ryking's death. Now, it's established in the backup stories by Lobdell and Mark Teixeira in issues 10 and 11, featuring Maverick, that Maverick killed Alexander Ryking. Okay, so there's a tying together here of things we've seen in previous issues of the title. So Fabian Nicieza picking up on that continuity in the title as he takes over. I just want to note here at the cemetery, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the technique for delineating foliage here with ink. It's nicely done. It's kind of like could be applied maybe with a tissue on the page. Nicely done. Interesting element of style there from Thibert. So Professor X back in a conventional wheelchair, and he's met by this person, Mr. Blackwell, who says that Mr. Ryking, Alexander Ryking, the dead man, was a great man and did a lot for Sioux Falls. And Professor X here says, from what I'm beginning to understand, he did a great many things for a great many people. So a little bit ironic there from Professor X. So here he is contemplating the headstone. They got the headstone up pretty quickly for Riking, and he is thinking to himself about how he doesn't know anyone at the funeral. How old was he when he last saw Riking? 8 or 9. The last time I saw him was after my father died. So Professor X's father, Brian, died when he was 9 years old. So much buried away, he thinks, so much of it inside the soul. What were you involved in, father? He thinks. This is very reminiscent of a shot of Jim Lee's, maybe even from Uncanny X-Men 277 is in my mind. So definitely Thibert once again, like looking back over his Jim Lee issues for putting together this issue of X-Men. And then Professor X's thoughts are interrupted by someone, pain. He was involved in pain, the pain of giving life and the pleasure of taking it. So who is it? And it turns out to be Hazard, though we don't get his code name mentioned in the story, as I said, but it's just on the cover. So this is Carter Ryking. It's Alexander Ryking's only son, and he's not happy about his father. He was a liar, a manipulator, he shouts. And basically he starts killing people at the funeral, the guards there, and Professor X uses his telepathy to stop him from doing any more harm. And he telepathically communicates with Carter. I'm inside your mind, try to calm yourself. I know you, responds Carter. Yes, I do, Charles, it's you, isn't it? So we see them in the past playing as friends, young boys, outside the Almagordo facility. And Carter asks him for help. And Professor X doesn't know how exactly to help. Here's that technique again with the foliage of the trees. Definitely some kind of tissue application of the ink. Nicely done. And here we have him calming down now, and Professor X thinking how he needs to contain this situation before any more innocents are harmed. And basically he asks Carter, where do you expect to find answers? The place my life began and ended, where my life was lost to me forevermore, he says, Almagordo. Okay, so this is being teased throughout, Almagordo. So clearly we're going to be going there next issue. And then we've got this news report of Professor X being taken away, abducted, as it seems, from the cemetery. Interesting little Easter egg again here, R.I.P. Panosian. So Dan Panosian working on this page, no doubt. And here's that technique again of probably tissue paper smudging the ink to delineate the foliage of those trees. And now we switch back to the underground complex beneath the X-Mansion, and X-Men Blue Team's ready room. And I like this here where we've got our 3 TV panels covering the 2 reporters and news reporters regarding what's going on at the cemetery. And then Thibert photocopied these panels, reduced them down and pasted them up here on the X-Men's televisual monitor screen. So nice little technique there. And here they're having a meeting where they're getting informed by Val Cooper of what's happened. And Wolverine says to her that she's got a team researching Riking for something which links him to Charles, and Wolverine says, we know where Riking took Charlie, Val, and why. So Almagordo, of course, as he holds that Xavier file. And Val says, it's been a husk for decades, it's empty. She asks, why would Riking take Charles there? For the same reason Charlie would want to go, to find out what secrets are hidden there. So Val offers to scramble X-Factor, but Scott says, no, this one's ours for obvious reasons. We want first crack at it. So she acquiesces to that. And, you know, she concludes on the point Almagordo has been a graveyard for decades. So she doesn't know what they expect to find there. And our final caption says, and the graveyard shall give up its secrets. So that's our cliffhanger for the next issue. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men number 12, the first issue after Jim Lee's jumping ship to co-found Image and create Wildcats. If you like this video, please do so. Please hit the like button. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.